and welcome back to the class where we continue learning about the mind. In this class I will introduce you to more details and actually more practical. How can you live in that middle center between not going fully insane with that manas and also how to use it as a tool that will really support you in life. So there are two main contents inside of the manas. We will break it down into two parts. One is functional mind and one is emotional mind. So functional mind is actually an amazing tool. It has this linear, direct attitude of going and implementing and manifesting and acting. You can consider it as a perfect executive that you have hired. So it has tremendous skills of planning and analyzing and structuring and seeing the big picture and then break it down into smaller steps. It is also that cold part of the mind where it just knows what exactly work it needs to do. So it goes there, does the work, and then comes back. And that's why it's very useful. So it doesn't procrastinate, it doesn't get stuck somewhere, but there is another part which is emotional mind, emotional manas. Now the purpose of emotional mind is to assist the functional mind. Because if you think the functional mind like a robot just does the work, it becomes very mechanical and almost like a program. So it can become boring or exhaust. So there is something missing there, a sense of pleasure. So the emotional mind brings that sense of joy and pleasure. And this is a positive manifestation of emotional mind. While there is a negative phase, emotional mind can really get addicted to the pleasure. And if you think of that part of the mind as a toddler or as a child, so what happens with children? They constantly want to play. They constantly want entertainment and joy and party and celebration to continue. And if at the end of the day you will say to this child, so okay, we have played the whole day, it was an amazing day, now it's time to go to sleep. Even if the child wants to sleep, it will never say, yes, I want to sleep. And even if you say, yeah, but you can play tomorrow, but you need to rest, take a pause, the mind is the same. It doesn't want to take a pause, and most of the time it wants pleasure. Now this pleasure can become addiction. And as it goes deep into these addictions and attachment and longing for pleasure, it can go into pain. And this is where I often say that sometimes we lose thin line between what is pleasure and what is pain, and we mix it up. So we humans have tendency to indulge ourselves into something very pleasant. We don't want to stop that. And then if it stops, we want more. So we want more, we will go search for more. And if there is a sacrifice or you need to compromise yourself in order to get that pleasure, most of the time you will do. And this is a very good example of smoking, of drugs, of alcohol, but this is very external and something visible, yeah, it's obvious. If you think more of a mental process, for example, there are some thoughts that are really damaging, but you continuously think of them. It's like a masochist who is torturing itself but loves it. If you think of a wound, so have you ever had a wound which is healing and it's like so itchy, and you sit and just scratch and scratch and scratch, and then you don't notice how you scratched it to blood. So this is exactly the thing that is happening with the emotional mind. Now, why does the emotional mind act this way? Well, because the emotional mind, that part of yourself, wants a constant recognition and validation to make sure that things that it does are very valuable and important. So there is a functional mind who does very important part of the mental work. And then there is emotional mind, which is like, oh, pleasure, I don't know. And also there is a big drama around pleasure that in childhood, when we wanted a simple pleasure that we could allow ourselves, we were forbidden. So now pleasure becomes forbidden fruit that we long to have, and that really stimulates this experience. So now the emotional side of the mind thinks, I want also to be important. I want to know that something that I'm doing is very, very needed. So the functional mind, chitta, buddhi, and ahamkara are interested in constant evolution and improvement, while emotional mind is interested in pleasure, then if it's more negative, pain, and more negative, recognition and validation. And it can become a big obstacles for all the other parts, because as you remember, they will drag each other and affect each other. So if you are somebody who doesn't know how to take a pause and to really notice that internal game of that emotional and functional mind, all your consciousness process will work for that. And this is where we lose this sense of self-identity, and we are constantly driven only by external stimuli. Now, how does this manifest into external world? Something must be there that will accommodate this process. So the bridge is the five senses. And this is what I have mentioned in the previous class when I was drawing. Remember, the five senses were like windows through which we perceive the world. Now, the perception of the world from person to person will be different. We look at the same thing and we have completely different perception. That means that my five senses, my filters, and your filters are totally different. So it means that we both build our truth around the same object. But then which truth is true? This is the point. So we can say there is no true about anything. If we are only limited to perceive the world through our senses, it means that we actually don't know what is the true reality. We are only building that reality through those filters, and then the mind interprets it in the way that is more habitual, whether it's pain, pleasure, addiction, overworking, overthinking, and etc. So your way to live throughout the day, to look at things and to build relationship, is based mainly on that. And through those interactions, we created stories in our head, and also the story of self-identity, and also judging other people by the way we see them and perceive and interpret. And in a way, this is completely crazy, because it means that we most of the time live in full ignorance of the reality. But how can we change that? We need to work with the senses. The senses, the filters, need to be constantly clean, pure, not overdrained, and stay just light and opened, because the senses are very sensitive. So let's look into each one of them. First gate to perceive the reality are eyes. I put it first because it It is the biggest gate through which you perceive the majority of everything that is around. The information that you get through the eyes into the brain is very fast. So if you think of this, the eye and the brain, what stands behind them is just optic nerve, and it's very short. So in a way, eyes are actually part of the brain. And even more, I really love this idea that says that your eyes are external image or external part of your brain. So right now, as you are looking into my eyes, you are actually looking at my brain. And I think that's why eyes are so fascinating. And if you really look close to the eye in the mirror, you will see this tremendous patterns of like forms and shapes and colors. It's so beautiful, and as if it has a depth. So actually looking into the eyes for a long time is so healing. So the eyes perceive the majority of information. For example, you will not believe something you heard, something you read until you actually see that. So if I will tell you, oh, there is an amazing island, it's a magical island, it has such a beautiful nature, and people there are so special, this tribe and everything, so I will start indulging you about this island. So you heard me, you imagine that. So now what is left to make your impression 100% complete is to actually see it with your own eyes. Now the brain has 12 pairs of cranial nerves, out of which four are working exclusively for vision. 4 out of 12 just for eyes, this is a lot. It means that the brain dedicates a lot of processing and relationship with the vision. The information perceived through the eyes is very strong. And this is how I can scroll back into a childhood. So in a childhood, our parents will teach us verbally something. Do this, do that, don't do this, don't behave like this. But then, like there is no perfect parent. When they tell you be nice, we start observing situations where our own parents are not nice. But this is not expressed and discussed, but you can see that. So children, through seeing the dynamics of their family and upbringing and society, they record and imprint a lot of information about behavior, belief system, etc. And that's why we grow and we become what we become. And most of the time we are not happy by what we became. Now it's very important to mention that today the way we use our eyes, we really drain them. Most of all, it is related to technologies, the light and the electricity. Where our eyes were not designed for that. Not designed for the superficial desires, for the superficial addictions and pleasures. Our eyes are also called the window to the soul. Eyes are given to us so we can start learning how to perceive beyond the obvious. So you see a situation, a certain dynamics, and you don't pick on that superficial layer of judging and making interpretation. You don't rush into that. You allow yourself to step back and see the bigger picture, which will maybe reveal itself with time, but we don't have that patience. We always rush to make conclusions of what we saw. And this is something where you can start creating an intention to become that visionary woman who can see beyond the obvious. Now, woman's vision is very special to her in her spiritual growth. We are somebody who are extremely susceptible to external stimuli, and for women, she really loves to see. That's why we have tendency to surround us with beautiful things. We want to dress up. We don't want to see something bad. On a spiritual level, woman wants to see peace around, peace and beauty. On a very low frequency vibration, that manifests as just makeup and buying things and have good muscles and maybe a handsome man. So it's a very superficial, very primitive desires. On a bigger scale and higher level, woman just wants to see beauty around the world, and that beauty means peace and absence of war, absence of poverty, hunger, and etc. This is the beauty that she wants to see. So if she wants to see that, we also believe that woman has to create that beauty. So my recommendation, because to turn your eyes away from something really negative, but you are very curious, is a big challenge. So you can start practicing from very simple things. Let's say you walk on a street and you suddenly hear that somebody is fighting or somebody is drunk. So something not very healthy, and you don't want to witness that. When you heard, the first instinct is to turn your head and look what happened there. So there is always a gap, a pause which you can consciously use. You heard something, you don't need to look at there. Now when you will start preserving your vision from that, you will see how you are strengthening your willpower. You will see how you are strengthening your ability of choices. That is very thin, very subtle art of using your vision. Of course, you need to be aware of the circadian rhythm, which not only works for digestion, but also with the vision. We know as we wake up, before we had all the electricity and technologies, we would rise with the sunrise and go to bed with the sunset. And there is no electricity, so your eyes, as it becomes twilight, they start resting. So around like 7-8 p.m., we are still today going crazy on the mobiles. So the blue screen, all of this bombarding and stimulation of the eyes affects the brain and suppresses the melatonin production. And then we don't recharge fully during our sleep. Another recommendation is to actually start exercising your eyes. So there are many different exercises where you start rotating your pupils and just feeling how you're actually doing that, and some tissues deep inside of the eyeball are moving. This is very good for the brain. The second is giving yourself a time when you just close your eyes during the day. You know, when you close your eyes during sleep, this is the supreme state of relaxation. And sometimes when we read and sometimes when we look at the screen, we don't blink. But blinking means moisturizing and also exercising the muscle. So blinking and during the day just closing your eyes, and you have that imagination that you are breathing and exhaling, inhaling through your eyes, and really allowing them to rest. There is a very beautiful technique. It's called Trataka. It's coming from Ayurveda and Yogic tradition, where you set a candle in the whole darkness. You set a candle on the same level as your face, and you start gazing that candle. In the beginning you will be blinking because it's natural, and then you stop blinking, and actually this is very therapeutic. So what happens is, as you watch that element, and the fire has a power to transform. When I did that, I felt as at some point as if this fire is actually entering my eye, and it starts itching and tingling, and then tears, just tears as a reaction to that practice come up. So this is very deep washing and purification of the eyes. So you can try that as well. Now here I would like to combine this yogic philosophy of the eyes and senses and the mind into Taoist practice. In Taoist practice, eyes are connected to the liver. So there are 5 yin organs and they have their yang partners, also 5. So together it's 10. And each yin organ is connected to a certain sense. So liver is connected to the eyes. The emotion of the liver is anger. Now think about that. If you will imagine a very angry person, somebody whose eyes are red like bulls, like a very angry bull, and this makes so much sense. When people have a really bad condition of liver, you can see that the part that is white becomes very blurred, sometimes grayish, like reddish, very unhealthy color. A lot of that happens to people who smoke a lot, because smoking affects the blood, and liver is storing the blood in Chinese medicine. So it means that liver is storing all those toxins, and that's why you can see that through the eyes. The yang pair of liver is gallbladder. So liver and gallbladder. Gallbladder eliminates that bile, and we know that sometimes people have excess of that really toxic bile. This is how the anger manifests. So somebody who is very, very addicted in his vision and very strong judgments through the eyes will end up with a lot of accumulated anger in the body. Now both liver and gallbladder, they are connected to the element of wood. Wood symbolizes the self-esteem, the growth, and the sense of direction. Where are you going? So when you are really holding that space for yourself and you grow without any obstacle, nobody is resisting, nobody is putting obstacles or blocks, you are really flowing within your nature. And when somebody puts those blocks, you get angry. When you don't own yourself and you don't have that self-esteem, you become angry. And many times this anger will not just manifest outside. This is actually not that damaging as in case when you turn it against yourself. The opposite emotion, because it's always a balance of plus and minus, the opposite emotion of liver and gallbladder is kindness. Now, how can we think of creating that sense of vision of kindness? It offers us that no matter what we see, if we had no choice to turn the head away, to turn the eyes away, we are going to see only through the filter of kindness. Learning that art of processing and digesting what you see, because physically liver will absorb all the toxins that your stomach could not digest. So when we say we are what we eat, I would add more to that. You are what you see, and you are what your organs could not digest, what your eyes and mind could not digest. So what happens when something comes in, the body cannot just shut down. You will intake everything, but then some of the toxins will accumulate there and affect your health. So this is regarding vision, and now let's go to the next one, which is hearing, the sense of hearing. So 2 ears will very often mess up our minds. It's like whether you are listening here or there, and it creates that negative impact where we don't know who to listen. There are so many opinions, and most of the time these opinions are not based on truth, but they're based on those filters of those people and their perception of the world. So we listen a lot to toxic speech, to violent communication. A lot of the time we are manipulated by the words, and we have tendency to believe that which we heard, especially women. They really love to hear sweet things from men, and they have a tendency to believe. So let's say a man is promising something or just mention something, and you will really latch to that and take it as the truth, and then create your whole imagination. That happens a lot when there is so many real situations I saw when a man would say something to a woman, and then he will go back to his life even not remembering her, but she creates that thinking like, oh my God, maybe he's the one. He told me this and he spoke like this. He's such a blah blah blah, and the mind goes on and goes on while this guy is already fully out of her life. So women should not rely on what they hear, as it creates a sense of losing the balance. You are not fully grounded. And apart from two external ears, we have that one central internal ear, which also is responsible for inner balance, like the somatic proprioception of your body in the space. It is responsible for the equilibrium. If we turn that into somatic knowledge of the body, it means if you will listen more on this side and follow this ear, then the balance is lost. Come back to the center. Listen to yourself. The same on this side. So constantly like on scales, and there is no equilibrium. So constantly asking yourself, what did I hear and what can I learn from there that will develop and invest in my growth? Because these are filters, and in Russian we say took from one ear and released through the other. It's like, you are listening, but it alls like a wind blows through. So nothing stays. But if you picked some very important information, this is where you tune up your ears and really start taking that information as education. There is interesting dynamics between wanting to hear sweet and nice things about myself and don't want to hear the truth. So sometimes we have this expression that truth can hurt, and we are not able to hear the truth. But this is where emotional mind steps in. It wants to have pleasure through these ears and getting that information that the functional mind actually cannot use. It doesn't know what to do. But of course it will take, and then it will pass into the deeper parts of the mind. And this is where we become hostages of that what we hear. When you don't like something that you hear, you have all the rights to stop it. So let's say you are in a conversation, and this is how we mainly damage ourselves and others. We are sitting there and holding space for somebody who is sharing really negative things, maybe personal, but in fact, it's like this person is wanting to purge and offload this luggage. That's why it means share. But you can be somebody who says, hey, I don't want you to share this, don't give it to me. Like, can we spend time in a non-violent, compassionate communication? How can we choose the topics for conversation where we do not put each other into recognition, pain, validation, pleasure, accusing, and judgment, and really toxic words. If we connect ears to the Chinese medicine, what do we have? Ears are interestingly shaped in a similar way as kidneys. So ears and kidneys are together. They are supportive partners. Kidneys is a drainage system that eliminates the toxic. It is the yin organ. The yang pair is the bladder. Kidneys release everything that body took, processed, and now there is an excess or something that needs to leave the body. This is how we need to listen. Because listening externally will never, almost never, will bring you to that center. There is another purpose for the hearing where you turn your hearing inwards and you actually need to listen to that internal voice. And most of the time, 90% of what you hear around is just a bombarding, distracting noise everywhere. Now, the emotion of kidneys is fear. And this is amazing how the Taoist philosophy perfectly sits with the somatic medicine and the psychology. So the emotion is fear, is familiar to us since we were in mother's womb. When a fetus in the womb hears weird and very loud noises from outside, it will contract. It will go to that fetus posture and bring everything in, so to protect. So as we grow, if you look at the child who is a toddler, let's say 1 or 2, and if you drop something very in a very loud way, or there will be like sirens of a car, or somebody will shout, the child doesn't process and understand. It's just hearing that massive noise really triggers some very primal fear in us. And not going far to children, even myself, when I hear something too noisy, too loud, I don't go into fear, but I think my body goes. But my mind just thinks, I don't like it, stop it, and I will close my ears. Like, I just want it to end. And this, the most sensitive and dangerous sound that we can hear is when somebody is shouting and calling us bad names. And deeper is the sound of a war. So suffering, when people are dying and there is a bombing, this is very, very deep on a cellular level, that fear. So how does it work? Most of the time when we were growing, we were hearing how people or parents were warning us about something. Don't go there, you will fall. Study well or you will end up jobless. Do this or blah blah blah. So that constant repetition of the stories of what we will do or not do that will bring us to a certain negative state is like a blackmail. So we start being scared of the future, scared who we will become, scared if we will become successful, good wife, good mother, and etc., if we will ever even marry. So listening to those voices creates that fear. Now, as we become adults, those voices that we heard in the past, in our childhood, become our internal, superficial mind, or the negative mind voices. And it constantly digs, it constantly irritates and doubts and judges and betrays and hesitates. So the listening and hearing connected to the kidneys, the water element, can become your experience as if you are in the womb. And this is a place where we always want to go unconsciously, even if you, in your mind, you don't consciously remember that. But this is our tendency when we feel sad and scared, we go into fetus pose and we cry, another element of the water. So being in those womb waters offers us to withdraw and become closed for that external, and only opening those doors when you need to take and process something. Otherwise, these doors should be closed. And then what happens is that you develop your hearing to another level. So there is a theory, and I believe this, and I really feel it, that everything in this universe of matter has a frequency. Different waves. Some waves we can hear, like you hear the wave of my voice, and some waves we cannot hear, like animals, they can turn the ear and you feel that this dog or cat heard something which you didn't hear. So there are such depth of these waves of frequency. And because there are many stimulants of external waves frequency, like think of all the connections of Wi-Fi and all these cords, electrical cords and satellites, and constantly being connected, and like Bluetooth, all of these things, they just create a whole web that blocks our senses from actually perceiving deeper the frequency of nature, or of the Mother Earth, or of your womb, of your organ, and of other people's like positivity, because we can also learn from each other. And most of the time you actually learn, you really connect with somebody when there is a silence, because silence is another form of wave frequency. So it's like lovers who know each other for hundreds of years, they don't even need to talk anymore. They just hold space for each other. And that space is so full with information and that love and everything that they share, that they understand each other without words. The positive part of the kidneys and ears is calmness. That is where you listen and you are perceiving everything in a neutral way. So you're not jumping into hyper plus excessive emotions of reacting, and you're not going into very negative minus. You are standing in that zero where there is a space of calmness. You heard something that you didn't have a choice, maybe something just happened, and somebody, you cannot control people's mouths and the sounds, but you can control the way you react to that. So if you will sense and hear everything through that sense of calmness, and then looking at everything with kindness, can you imagine that everything around you will go crazy? There will be chaos, but you are there holding your space for yourself. And then you can start perceiving information that is not accessible for normal standard people, for majority of people. So you hear, let's say, a prayer, or you study some really deep and spiritual books like scripts, or you hear somebody's reciting. Through that frequency, you start not just hearing, it's beyond that. You just start allowing this frequency to affect you positively. That's why they say that every time when you're listening to something, why don't you choose a prayer or a beautiful song or something that really elevates and purifies and washes your ears? There are so many beautiful mantras, and beautiful songs are positive. Where there is also a constant in this market of esoteric and spiritual practice, there is a constant addiction to improve yourself. So people end up to listening so many podcasts. It's all about listening right now, and also seeing. So it's like, I want more and more and more and more. But then actually the true knowledge is that which cannot be um, heard. It's not tangible. It's not that obvious. Otherwise, if there are so many resources for those spiritual people, why people are not healing finally? Because this is the wrong way. This is a very false way where you're going after the crowd who is willing to study and training and this and this and this, and you are just losing your own center where you know that teacher is always inside, and you just need to start listening to that. What is offered here is a practice of silence. First, it's that external silence. When you are, even if you are with people, you can hold your silence. But if you also stay alone and hold that silence, actually today there are many people who are single and they usually stay in silence. So what does it mean? It's not only talking. Also being on the phone and communicating to somebody is not silence. Listening to a YouTube or podcast, even to a music, can be not silence. A silence is actually when you unplug yourself from everything. And if you could dedicate your just one day in a week or maybe in a month where you know what you do, you turn off Wi-Fi, you turn off your fridge. It's sometimes good, I do it if I need to like clean and wash my fridge, I would turn it off. Even if you do that for 5 hours, you will feel the effect. So you switch off everything and then you just be there. You will feel how that silence is actually a tangible volume of some created space, like a womb space where you are sitting and you're like, wow, in that silence I can hear so much. Now another form of silence is where you can go deeper and explore the level of inner dialogue. When you create that external silence, that inner voice becomes louder. And that's why we people unconsciously tend to constantly talk and vibrate and just like buzz outside, so we numb the inner dialogue. When suddenly there is a silence and that dialogue starts coming up, people are freaking out, so they will call somebody and go out or just do something not to listen to that, because that voice can be scary. Again, fear. So we are sometimes scared to listen to what is inside, because that will slap you on your face and put your ego really down, crush your ego. So actually this is the medicine. You want to know who you are, put yourself into that inner space of silence and listen who and what will talk. I can also recommend you to take a kind of meditation without any music or guidance, which is also beautiful and effective, but it's another tool. So this way you are going to sit in silence and draw your ears, your hearing inside, and focus, for example, on your heartbeat. This is the most easy to catch. Sometimes though people tell me that they cannot feel the heartbeat, but I think this is not fully truth. The thing is that they don't practice that. So if you just go inwards and hold your space for your heart and just listen for the frequency of your heart, you can explore so much. You will take yourself into such a state of calmness just listening to your heart. The next sense is speech or the mouth. In classical Western world, we don't take speech as a separate sense. I think we lose a lot because of that. It is one of the most strongest sense that we have that impacts our life so much. If you will notice, we have that one mouth, we have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. In a way, this offers us to listen really well with awareness and filter, to see really well, and only then to speak, and speak less. So what happens today? Our eyes are there, our ears are there, and there is a huge mouth that is constantly blah 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 talking. So there is so much uncontrolled speech, violent speech, toxic speech, reactive communication, where you don't respond, but you react, and these are different things. The mouth is that gateway that will purge as a effect from that which you saw and what you heard. So it's like all this drama that you perceive through the eyes and ears will eventually manifest here. And that's why sometimes, or actually often, we end up in situation where we speak something that we really feel bad about. Oh, I don't know how I said that. I didn't mean that. I don't know how even these words came out from my mouth. But this is like weird. Who else is talking? This is your mouth. But the thing is, this becomes like a poison, you know, the tongue of the snake that really bites and kills. It is so fast, it is so reactive that you cannot hold it. So that's why sometimes we have tendency also to suppress what we say. We don't speak our pure truth. We talk a lot about something, but we don't talk about the main things. We turn to gossip or just empty talking, just wasting time and energy. And woman has a purpose on this planet to reveal and manifest the goodness, and this is how she creates the beauty and peace around, through her speech. It's a very nurturing and kind and calm speech. But also if you say to any woman like, please talk in a calm way, please be nice, you feel as if this is suppressing you and people are just dictating you how to be. This is wrong way. A woman is offered to create that internally. So the speech is born inside through those also filters, and then she feels, she tells herself, I can be calm and kind and let my speech be nurturing instead of damaging. Because with one word we can bless somebody, and with one word we can really curse somebody. Now in Chinese medicine, the speech, the tongue, is connected to the yin organ heart. And this is very, very, very significant. So heart sits here, and then you have vocal cords here. When you perceive external world through your senses, you kind of swallow that impression and it drops into the heart. The element of heart is fire. So that tells us that we need that fire, which is very calm and warm fire. But that fire can go into burning out and destroying everything, and that toxic smoke comes out as the toxic speech. So they are very together. So heart chakra, anahata, and vishuddhi, which is the throat chakra, are sitting together, not just by a coincidence. It's what you talk, you will express, and how you feel. So many times when you cannot control the tongue, so many times when somebody cannot control the tongue, the speech, there are also so many stirrings of like this fiery really strong emotions that are killing and damaging inside.
The young partner of the heart is small intestines.
When we have a bad digestion, it's like the whole tract is on fire. And there are many symptoms like ulcers or stagnation, constipation, inflammation. These are all aspects of fire. And when we are in that state of hatred, because the negative emotion of heart is hatred in Chinese medicine, you cannot digest things well in a peaceful way. You're going to swallow that in and really pass this toxicity through the heart, and it will affect the digestion. That's why sometimes when digestion is really interrupted, people have palpitation and really irregular heartbeat. Now the positive emotion is love, how to speak with love. Even sometimes the love will tell you, don't speak. Just keep your opinion for yourself. And that is a self-love. How can you be really self-compassionate? And save yourself, save your gut, save your heart, and that speech will manifest into very steady, very calm, confident words and the way you talk. It creates a sense of talking with wisdom. It means that you are wise enough to sometimes step back and just be quiet. Even if there is a room where everybody is talking and you feel like how the energy is building up and they're actually talking not anymore to share, but actually to impress and to stand out, you know? And this is ego and this is fire. So the fire rises up and you feel like you are on fire. Now in Chinese medicine, there is a second gate sense that is connected to speech, which is the mouth. So we have tongue, heart, and then we have mouth, spleen, and stomach, which is related to the element of earth. Now, this is a lot connected to the speech and also to the food and how we eat and what we eat. The element of earth offers us a tremendous opportunity to learn how to hold the ground. And this also can be used in the way we communicate. Are we holding the ground, or we are flying and burning like fire and losing the ground beneath? And you know that fire always burns on earth. So if you go camping, you will make the fire on earth. So the earth is supporting the fire. And this is how the mouth, the lips, supports the tongue. The speech, communication, and also food. So today we have a tendency to eat with people and talk. We eat in a way that we don't even chew the food properly. We swallow and we don't understand the measure of the volume of food we're eating. We undereat or we overeat more often. And during the process of eating, we are actually very vulnerable. We are opened to take the energy of the earth through the food. But instead of doing that, we are opening gates for all those conversation and all the negativity that is around us to eat that. So you are not only what you eat, you are also how you eat. So if you are eating in a big company and there is no even time to chew properly, but you are talking even with the food in your mouth, and you are discussing something very dramatic, because look, sometimes when you are meeting with friends, you haven't seen them for a while, it's a tradition, 100% you're going to share food. You meet in cafe, you meet in a restaurant, or you invite and you cook. So now start noticing, what are you discussing? For example, what I was witnessing People discuss someone's death, funerals, something very dramatic at work, some failure, some relationship breaking up, some about diseases, about politics. Oh my God. Like, really, this becomes the food. And now, no wonder that we have so many problems with stomach and spleen. So stomach takes the solid food and digests it, and the spleen in Chinese medicine is responsible to extract the energy or the subtle spirit of the food and transport it throughout to the body, to other organs. While actually Western medicine says that spleen is not that important, and if your spleen will be extracted and removed, you can still live. Like Eastern medicine and Chinese medicine really values this organ. And here the dominant is spleen. It's the yin and stomach is the yang. Now what is the emotion here? Oh, it's worry. Oh my God. This is where we have eating disorders because we are constantly worried. Another form of coping mechanism for women is when they are not finding their ground, they have tendency to go and munch here, munch there, or eat sweets. So they eat their worry inside and they lose their ground. The positive emotion is trust, right? It's about how do you trust yourself to eat alone or to eat in silence? Do you trust yourself not to worry? Do you trust your own mouth to speak wisdom and calmness? Do you trust that the future is bringing you something good and you don't need to worry? Do you trust that you are nourished and fed by your own body? That you can hold space for yourself? Do you trust that you have enough of guts to stand up on your ground, be rooted on earth, and speak up your truth? Speak up for yourself. If somebody is talking negative, you can speak from that kindness in your liver and love in your heart and calmness in your kidneys and ask in a very civilized way, hey, let's change the topic. I really feel like we can talk about it after eating. Let's enjoy the food. And you can maybe actually share some very, very wise and healthy habits with that person. So you can try that and trust yourself, it's gonna work. The next sense is the sense of smell. It's our very primal, instinctive sense. So actually, we choose each other. We choose our tribe by smelling others. We're not aware, but there is a huge limbic system that is very primal where we feel each other. You know, sometimes when you sit next to somebody and there is kind of a sense that you don't feel fully opened or comfortable in that company, you don't understand what's that. The person seems clean and reasonable and calm, but there is just not your cup of tea. So in a somatic way, it's said that you smelled something fishy. You know, there is an expression, I smell something fishy. It's not that you actually smell the fish. It means that your intuition is telling you something. It is the self-protection. Sniffing and smelling is how animals are still communicating with each other. This is how they know they trespassed the territory. This is how they introduce themselves to each other. And this is also how they can smell that something is coming over. The sense of smell is one of the most subtle, and actually all the other senses, they have tendency to suppress the smell, which means suppress the intuition, and you start feeling like you don't smell anymore. You know that there is a known fact I read about that there is a disease, I forgot the name, where people cannot smell things, like there is no smell at all. And this illness became popular only as we started going into technological progress. Before, it was not known to people. So our lifestyle, the modern lifestyle, is saying that we lose the connection with our instinct, with our intuition. The sense of smell is connected to the organ of lungs, of course. This is where inhale life and exhale. The emotion here is sadness or grief. And this is very logical. You know, when you see a woman who is very sad or grieving, we have this even movement when you cry, you kind of move, and there is a lot of prolapse here. So we roll our back, and the whole posture is really closed and compressed. Where when there is a sense of opening, who are taking these postures like this and lifting the head? This is very typical for warriors. The positive emotion is courage, is when you're opening and spreading your shoulders wide, and you are bravely breathing throughout your life. You are brave because you trust your instinct, and you know that it is going to protect you from everything. So what is there to fear? You can be brave. Step forward. Don't be sad. Everything is good. You are in a good place.
The yang pair of yin lungs is large intestine, and both these organs teach us how to really let go. It's when you can exhale fully, you can relax. And also large intestine is responsible for that final elimination of the digested food out of the body. When you are sad, it's like you're putting your bowels into a very weak state, where also when you are not able to let go of something in your life, there is a sense of constipation. And the metal element shows us how sometimes we really need to cut that something and really let it go.
Taking that really long breath and practicing the breathing exercises allows actually to control or balance the other senses. So I will introduce you now to that Yoni mudra. Yoni translates as womb. So you do this way. You use your hands. You use index and middle to cover your eyelids, and you give just a little bit of pressure, very gentle, just to have that confident, solid connection here. Then you use your thumb to close your ears. Then you put your the ring finger, here at the root of the nose. And this is a very important acupuncture point that will allow you to really calm yourself down. Now the pinky go to the corners of your lips as also reminders that it is the speech. So you cover everything simultaneously, and then you go inwards. So look what's happening. You closed all your senses, you're drawing inwards, and you're like in a state of womb. That's why it's called Yoni Mudra. And then you are going to use your voice and breath into a humming. finish, you can do that for like 3-5 minutes. Don't rush to open your eyes, because the eyes, especially being pressed a little bit, they really become sensitive. So you will feel that after 3 minutes, when you come back, you open your eyes, you're like, whoa, you see colors and something is moving. But one thing I forgot to mention, when you seal all your senses, you have to put the tip of your tongue on the roof of your mouth. There is a point that is like a hole. It's very soft. It's not back. It's somewhere like to the front and up. You place the tip of the tongue very gently, and that creates a connection chain reaction throughout your body, and also puts the tongue into a state of silence and connection, which is the speed. So all of your senses here are involved. And this you can use whenever you need a quick reset. So let's say you are at work or somewhere where you really feel like you are buzzing and you're on fire and people are around very too hyperactive. Just sit and do that. And most of the time people feel shy to do that because, again, they trust the external and think people will judge me. So if you are calm, if you love yourself, if you trust yourself, if you are kind to yourself, you know that you have all the courage to do that wherever you choose, because this is your body and this is your life.
To summarize what you have just learned within this 1 hour is the theory of 5 elements in Chinese medicine and Taoist practice, and how each element is connected to a pair of organs, yin and yang, and the emotions, negative and positive. So the emotions in Taoist practice are not just something that you feel, they are actually believed to be spirits. So every organ is a house or home for these two spirits. So let's say heart has hatred and love. And the heart is in a way nurtured by both, because these are two polarities, and together they make the experience and the energy complete. So Taoist practice believes that there is no need to eliminate or get rid of negative emotions. You are actually just needed to balance them. So your heart wants 50-50, part of the hatred and part of the love. Because then when it's balanced, you are not going to the extreme expression of them. And the mental and physical disease comes when any of these emotions are taking over. So over love is not healthy. Over trust is not healthy. It can really bring you to trouble in your life. That's why somewhere to have that balance and to be aware where you need to stop, you need to have both positive and negative emotions.
So this is it for today. And in the next class, I want to share with you the practice, the Taoist practice of 6 healing sounds, how you actually practice with the organs, and there are certain healing sounds that you do for each organ, and that will give you so much of energy. So I will see you in the next class. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.